I could have been under the bridge. I could have been freezing outside, but small acts of loving kindness, I think, is what has made me who I am today, where I'm feeling like I need to return that same love and compassion to people.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Book Leads Impactful Books for Life and Leadership. I'm your series host and leadership performance coach, John Jaramillo. And this podcast is about getting to the books that have impacted the lives of the people in my network. So these are great leads that I'll be interviewing to get to those books. I want to know which book it is that's contributed the most to who they are, the work they're doing, just who they are in life. And my guest today is Eran Nazario. And Eran is the principal owner of Nazario Motivation LLC, a consulting practice dedicated to uplifting individuals and communities through lived experience. Through consulting, training, strategy, and program development, he helps groups, institutions, and organizations navigate challenges, foster transformation, and achieve positive outcomes. With over 3 decades in program and strategy development, program management, youth outreach, and community engagement and mediation, Eran has made lasting contributions to social change. As the founder and former CEO of the Peace Center of Connecticut, he led initiatives in leadership development, violence intervention, community engagement, and pioneering the inclusion of formerly incarcerated individuals as community resources. Eran has trained and presented for schools, youth service agencies, and organizations nationwide, focusing on crisis response, violence intervention, and strategies for organizational and community transformation. Committed to social justice and equity, he serves on the Wethersfield Greater Good Collective and the Connecticut Police Officers Standards and Training Council. And a published author and motivational speaker, his memoirs, The Original Peacebuilder and Rage to Peace, inspire personal transformation and highlight his journey to becoming a peacebuilder, while his co-authored poetry collection, Bullets into Bells, addresses the impact of gun violence in Connecticut. Before I go any further, right, that's where the bio leaves off. And I'm like, all right, this is too long. I don't want to read this because I'll trip up. And there's nothing I could cut out, man. That bio is beautiful, all the work that you're doing. So it just didn't feel right to abridge it or shorten it or anything. We'll get into that. But I'm bringing Eran back. He was with me in August of 2025 for episode 149, where he covered the book that I just mentioned, Rage to Peace. From wounded child to gang member to peace advocate. Dude, thank you so much for coming back to this conversation.
Oh, and listen, thank you so much for having me, man. It's like I said before, I love the fact that we have a conversation that's free flowing, that your interest is genuine in content and dialogue and connection. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to be with you, brother. So thank you again.
I can only say the gratitude is very strong on this side, just because, especially all the work that you're doing these days. I mean, not to get into everything that's going on in the world, but it's just incredible how in so many months since August, the world has changed that much more, with people of color being targeted and immigrants and just that the immigrant mentality. Again, there's violence in the streets. But maybe we'll touch on those topics. But for you, even before we get into my questions around what resonates with you? What stands out? What do you think when somebody's reading your bio back to you of all these different things that you've done?
Well, first, I think my initial thought is what is it that means, right? All that, right? What does it mean? And it really awakens in me this particular feeling that despite all of that, I still don't want to give up. Like the fire doesn't burn out. It literally is a driving force in my life to feel like that's going to be said by other people. However, what I'm going to do is going to be directed by me, and I have to be a vessel for change. So I'm honored that I've had the opportunity, right? I've had the blessing, and I've had the people, the opportunities to have all those things happen. However, I also feel that it's really just a glimpse into what I can still accomplish. My mentor, Mike Borrero, who I spoke with during our first interview, and he's 84 now, and we still talk on a regular basis. And he'll say, you're just scratching the surface, buddy. You're just scratching the surface. So to me, I feel that it's an honor to have lived that life and to have done that. However, it's also a driving force in continuing to do what I want to do.
It is crazy how anything we do, anything we accomplish, anything we succeed at, whatever you want to look at, anything we check off the boxes of just action we've taken, whether for business, nonprofit, community, whatever it may be. It's incredible how no matter what we've done, it's always scratching the surface.
Mm.
That there's always more work that can be done. That
Yes.
there's always more that can be carried out. That there's always more people that can be helped.
Mm.
So it's good that he did that, that he keeps saying that to you. And obviously I can tell it's sunk in because you realize like that was the first response you gave when I asked you about this long list
Yeah.
is just, you're just scratching the surface that there's more to get to.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we evolve every day, every minute. I actually I lead a TikTok power hour twice a week, and it's from eight to nine, and then some other stuff happens after nine. My general like core message to my viewers and people that I engage with from all around the world is every single moment you have an opportunity to chisel and to shape another part of you, right? Like recreate. And to me, my essential belief is that every single moment that I experience is another teachable moment, right? Another lesson that I'm learning. So how do I arrive at a point where I have nothing else to gain from learning, right? So to me, that's not a place I want to arrive at.
Yeah.
So I think to me, it's critically important that I stay there. I have to stay there. It's a matter of principle. It's a matter of practice. It's a matter of my core wanted to continue to evolve. I learn so much from the interactions I have with people on a daily basis, whether it's my team members, my partners, my community partners, my funders, my etc. Um, Staying open minded to learning and understanding you're evolving every moment is a critical to continuing to want to evolve.
Iran, for you, you just mentioned your mentor.
Mm.
Was it working with him that kind of, and this is before we jump into general questions, was it working with him that kind of awoke that in you? That it's always like a constant journey, it's always constant work. When did you kind of gain that mentality that the work's never done, that this area, this focus may be covered for now, but that there is constant evolution always taking place?
Well, it was a number of people. John Wardlaw, the Housing Authority, when he was the director, my mentor Michael Borrero, and then a couple of other folks that I would watch, and their drive was consistent, right? It was a consistent drive, right? Talking about both Wardlaw and Borrero. Wardlaw's this tall, powerful African American former pro football player that became the director of housing, having come from housing himself, evolved into a status, used his status to gain a job where he can go back and change the same environment that he came from, right? Mike
Yeah.
Borrero, on the complete opposite spectrum, is 5'3", 5'4", right? So the stature. However, he had a medical condition where he unfortunately had a leg issue, and that hampered him a little bit. But you know what, the person came from that, became a professor at the University of Connecticut School of Social Work. Not only did he do that, he became a pilot, and he became a business owner. Now he's an author. And even at 84, 85, I believe, he is now publishing another book, right? So it's literally that, watching that happen with these guys. Well, yeah, I'm a professor. Yeah, I'm a former NFL player. I'm a director of this massive group. But my thirst for more, and not financially, I'm talking about just effort, just putting something together that makes change, or something that I emulate, something that I feel like it had a direct impact in how I approach my days.
Incredible. So, around for you, who are you today? Can you provide a little bit more about your work? I mean, there's so much that I shared before. So, what does your work look like in the day to day where you're in each of those categories, specialties?
Yeah.
What does that look like? What does all that work look like in the day to day?
So first, it looks like someone that steps into the role that you mentioned earlier as a consultant to help bring about success for organizations, groups, or institutions. So this is social and human services. You're talking academic institutions like schools, et cetera, high schools, middle schools. You're talking about recovery spaces. You're talking about people who are justice impacted spaces. You're talking about outreach workers, I come in as a consultant. I kind of take a look at everything they're doing, and I look to amplify that voice. I look to amplify their success. So that's one kind of visual entry into what it looks like. The second part of it is creating programs for middle and high schools that they can use to help young people learn leadership skills and emotional intelligence. Third is my public speaking, my motivational speaking, my public face. I'm constantly. We talked about pre-show. I mean, constantly in the face of something, preaching something about positivity, love, kindness, humanity. I feel like as long as I have voice, I should do that, right? Every platform that I go. So it looks that way. And then lastly, as an author, book talks, public appearances, and a continuation of my writing, which what we could talk about a little bit further than that. So I think that's right now I'm feeling like my life is aligned in those three areas of my career.
So I spoke about or mentioned before how you joined me in an episode last summer.
Yes.
And here at this point is where to understand who you are, I want you to walk me through your life from like, adolescence or whenever that impact was made for you that changed your life to now. We don't have to go through as much detail as last time. I want people to take a listen to that last episode. But for you, yeah, from the moments in your life that kind of laid the foundation for who you are today, can you give me kind of like the pivot points, the major markers that make you who you are today?
Oh, thank you. That's a beautiful question, my brother. I appreciate that. And as you were talking about it, I've had a lot of time to reflect, not only based on what's happening in the world, right, and what I deal with and what families are dealing with, but I also have had time to recognize the gifts that my life has been, right. And this is what I'll say. I'll first start with a moment of compassion, right, and I think that that's important. When I became unhoused, actually before that, I was unhoused. I was on the streets, but before that, I had suffered and been through a childhood abuse and neglect. And a gentleman stepped in from the Department of Children, Youth, and Family Services back then. And now it's DCF, Department of Children and Families. And I was his first removal. I was the first child he had ever removed from a home, and along with my brothers and sisters. I got to meet him. I got to see him and talk to him many years later. When I wrote the first book, I needed some context, and I was able to actually find him and talk with him, which was incredible. What I learned from him is that his heart was torn by needing to remove us from our structure system. Although the structure system was broken, is what we knew as a structure system for us. So that was one moment of compassion, right? Where someone said, I can turn a blind eye to this. I don't culturally connect with you. I'm not your same race, etc. But my heart is hurting, and I need to get you out of this situation, right? So that's one. The second, when my friend Jose Cello Mendez, who's no longer with us, may he rest in peace. He would allow me to sleep in his dad's car when I didn't have a place to stay. He would take his dad's car keys without his permission and open the door and let me sleep in the back seat and sneak over some rice and beans or food from his mom that she had made into the back seat so I could eat dinner, right? Third, when I finally found community, I found people that would just let me sleep for months at a time at their place, and they opened up their place to me. So when I talk about what starts to build you versus I could have said, and I could say, well, it was the influence of my mentors, et cetera, et cetera. When you look back, though, it really was the seeds of compassion that people were planting, and I didn't realize that. So as later on, you start realizing, wow, like I could have been under the bridge, I could have been freezing outside, but small acts of loving kindness, I think, is what has made me who I am today. Where I'm feeling like I need to return that same love and compassion to people. And if it's formed in the way of human services, social services, consultancy work, motivational speaking, but it's still compassion. It's still giving people a reason to feel supported and loved and cared about and nurtured, right? And educated and really connected to something. I feel like on a deeper level, that's what really has formed who I am. The level of compassion and commitment that I have to helping people came from the examples of people helping me.
So I want to ask you to keep going through your youth, because obviously so much of your later youth
Yeah.
informs who you are today and what you're doing. But then when did you, before getting into that, when did you first think about that compassion piece? You know what I mean? Because we
Yeah.
always tend to think about the things later in life as like the last thing that shaped me. And for
Sure.
you, a lot of it was violence driven, right?
Hmm.
In the streets and whatnot.
Sure.
But for you, when did you come to that realization where you looked past? I mean, I've heard your story. You shared it with me.
Yeah.
I know the turning points. I'm trying to kind of parse it out for the listeners.
Sure.
But where did that come from for you? That kind of discipline to say, okay, it wasn't like the violent part of my past or where I experienced that,
Yeah.
but going back further was the compassion that laid this foundation.
Right. So for me, when I think about the moments, right, think about as you asked, think about the moments that shaped who I am, and when did that happen for me? When did I realize compassion was it? Is when I learned how to have compassion for myself. I'm in the elevator with my mom. May she rest in peace. And my son was a premature baby. He was born at about 2 pounds, and he was in the NICU of a hospital here in Connecticut. And my mom, I hadn't seen in a long time because my mom was addicted and afflicted with drug and dependency and things like that, and prison time and all of that. And because of that, we didn't have a lot of connection. When my mom came back around, she wanted to see my son. She had heard through the grapevine that my son was in the hospital, so she came to visit. In the elevator, my mom started giving me advice on how to be a dad and what to do. And because I had suffered abuse at her hands and abandonment at her hands and her actions, I was really angered by that. I took it personal that you would come to me and tell me how to parent when in many instances I'd never had you. I haven't seen you in years. And I blew up. I literally allowed the anger to rise. And I said a number of things to her that I feel today I shouldn't have had, but it was this burning pain that I just felt like, how dare you, right? Come at me this way. How dare you consult me on what a parent is when you and this elevator ride felt like 10 years of a ride, but it was literally a few floors because I just felt like
Yeah.
I had to dump on her for that. She cried. She was shocked. I hadn't come at my mom that way before. But literally after that, I realized as we were walking down the hallway to the NICU space, she was quiet. I was shaking. I felt unhealthy. My gut was burning. And I said to myself, wow, I literally have not forgiven my mom. I have not forgiven her to the point that this is making me sick. And I need to go see my son. They have a process called kangarooing when a child is born as a preemie, where
Yep.
they put them in like in a little sack and they put them
Yep.
onto your chest so you can connect and they get healthier that way. I didn't want to bring that energy into my son's NICU. So I had to center myself and say right there to my mom, Mom, I forgive you. And then I realized, I think that moment that I needed to have more healing and I needed to have more compassion for myself and I needed to start evolving into someone that could be forgiving versus holding on to that. So that's one of the moments that really, really sticks out to me because again, it was the one moment where I literally physically was ill and I couldn't afford to be because I had a son that depended on me and I had realized just how much trauma and pain and anger and rage and I held inside and I needed to let that go.
And around for those listening and watching, can you explain how you shifted from your previous life to your life of advocacy to your life of working with UConn? What was that turning point for you?
Well, there were a number of turning points, but I feel like the one that's most important for me. I joined gangs. I was part of gangs on the street. Right, I came again from homelessness and abuse to juvenile detention prisons to adult prisons, federal prisons, and what I learned through that process was that there were many men, talking about men specifically being in prison with them and on the streets, that were experiencing similar things as I was. And I feel that when I had to face members of opposing gangs who I grew up with, who I knew from the streets, who I knew whose family I knew, and I had to hate them, or I had to be willing to take them out or end their lives, and they had to be willing to do the same for me. Something inside of me said, "This is not how this is supposed to be. I'm not supposed to do this to these individuals." So I feel that not, working with John, working with Mike, at the same time that all this was happening, started kind of like turning the corner for me on what can I do with this particular group of people that I'm involved with to start changing the way that we're doing this. I don't want to hurt my brothers and sisters. I don't want to hurt the people that look like me, that grew up like me. I want to be able to be connected to them in some way, shape, or form. So in the gang itself, I actually was appointed a role in the gang, and that role gave me voice. And after that role gave me voice within that gang, I chose to use that voice for something different than what I was expected to use it for, which was, and I had an audience. I could say to them, "Why don't we get jobs? Why don't we clean the streets? Why don't we turn in guns that we're that we don't need to have? Why don't we reach out to the young people? Why don't we protect the neighborhood markets and vendors from people messing up their businesses or whatever the case might be?" And I felt like my voice started to move in that right space and that right pace. And then I got the fortunate bouncing ball, I guess, luck, where they appointed me the spokesperson of the game. And I started having media appearances and video recordings all about community. And I think that's when I first realized that I can be an advocate for peace and community and strengthening brotherhoods and connections in a way that I hadn't thought about before. I didn't have that voice before, and I feel that once I had that in a combination with my job at the housing authority, where I was hired as the first outreach worker for gangs in that community, I think those two particular instances formed the voice that you hear today.
All right. Can you speak to, from the bio I shared, you're the founder and former CEO of the Peace Center of Connecticut and then
Right.
the Weathersfield Greater Good Collective. Can you speak to how you came to found one organization and join the other?
Yeah, so the Peace Out of Connecticut was something that I thought about after watching Mike Borrero, my mentor, form the Institute for Violence Reduction at the University of Connecticut School of Social Work. So I watched him, like I said, I watched him a lot and I studied him a lot and I saw his leadership, what he was doing. And I said to myself, I was only 23, 20, 25, 25. So I'm literally just coming off having my high school diploma because I dropped out of school and I got my high school diploma when I was 23, going on 24. So I'm literally just starting my life right at that point, and I'm watching this man do this, and I said to myself, someday I'll have something like him. I'll run something and I'll help people. I'll get people jobs. All the things he was doing, he was hiring us, even without criminal records, no high school degrees. He was hiring us to work for him, and I felt really honored and inspired by that. So I always kind of locked it in my head that one day I'm going to found an organization. So as my career extended through the different eras of my life, I arrived at a point where I felt I had the capacity to do that. I was working as a peace builder, an outreach worker, a first crisis responder, supporter, and I felt that I had the skill set, the drive, and the ability to run an organization at that point. And I felt that I wanted to, at the Peace Center, my goal there was to unite peace efforts and to build a peaceful community with those committed to peace across the state of Connecticut. And that's when I decided to go for it. I launched the Peace Center, and I was there for about 10 years as the president and CEO. And it was one of those things that I'm honored to have done. I've met some amazing advocates for peace all over the country. And then the second role in Weathersfield, I am a resident of the town of Weathersfield, and I felt that if I'm in the community, I should give to the community I live in. And part of this project is really based on social justice and ensuring equality and equity and belonging, acceptance of all people here, their voices, their issues, their challenges, their gifts, their talents. And that's what we do as part of the Weathersfield group here is really lift up the voices of community.
I love Weathersfield.
Yeah.
I used to live there for a year. One of my friends from college used to live there, so I was there all the time. I was just there on Friday for a networking thing at the Old Town.
Oh, the old town.
Uh,
Yeah.
uh, what was the other thing I was going to ask around? So many questions for you, man. So,
Sure.
um, so obviously we've had this conversation before. I've asked you this before. You've answered it before, but I think it's such a powerful question to ask, especially with your life. But does it make sense from your childhood that this is what you're doing now? That
Does it
this is
make
what you're carrying out? Yeah.
yeah.
How do you speak to the connection between the work that you do now
Hmm.
and who you were as a kid? Now you've made so many connections that I think tie clearly, but are there any other words or anything else you want to add to what makes you so good at what you do now,
Hmm.
delivering what you do to the community based on your own experiences as a kid?
I feel that the connection for me is having lived a time where I was voiceless, right? Where I was smothered, where I was forced to adhere to things that were detrimental to me. I feel that I've been able to flip that on its head, flip it completely around, and use those lived experiences to make sure that I amplify my voice and I amplify the voices of other people, because I feel that that's my responsibility. I gained the awareness that my voice is important. I gained the awareness of what happened to me. It doesn't define me, but it does
Hmm.
educate me on what doesn't feel good, right? So if that doesn't feel good, why would I not want to share this with someone else and prevent them from feeling the same things for a long period of time? I say to the kids, and whenever I speak to kids, I spoke with a group of kids last week, and I say to them, you have an opportunity if you ask for help and you apply yourself and you really look at what your circle is of influences, you have an opportunity to actually change your trajectory of your life sooner than not. I didn't have that option. I didn't really literally have that option until I was in my 20s. You are 14, 15, 16 years old, and you have bought into a track or path, a way of thinking that is going to lead to challenges that you're not foreseeing right now. Make those changes now, adapt some minor things now, and you'll see that you'll be able to reduce the amount of stress, trauma, or chaos that exists in your life sooner. And I think that's one of the driving forces behind what makes me today who I am, why I do what I do. It makes me successful because I haven't forgotten. Right
Yeah.
in my first book, right, which you have, Reach to Peace. This, I look about the differences, but also how I use this guy to inform this guy. Can't You
Yeah.
can't put that person aside. It exists. If you still relive those memories and still have that pain, and you want to eliminate that in someone else's life, so that's the purpose.
What's been incredible about this podcast is talking to people like yourselves who are making global shifts, right? These are messages that I think that people need to hear, stories that people need to hear. You're out there trying to change the world. I mean,
Hmm.
it's not hyperbole and for the better. But what's incredible about people like you is that you're putting so much work, you have so much energy going into what you want to carry out for other people and how you want to help other people, informed by what you didn't have yourself
Hmm.
as a kid.
Yes.
Um, and it's incredible that most of the times it is trauma.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like your typical childhood that informs that kind of passion. But it's incredible how there aren't people that I've spoken to that kind of forget it. No, they bring it forward as a foundation to
Yep.
inform what they're doing for other people. So that trauma is not lost.
Right.
You know, we wouldn't prefer to take that route, but it's informing change for so many, and it's exponential.
Yes.
You know, you're talking to groups. It's not a one-to-one exchange or sharing of information. You're getting that word out there. People are seeing that they may be in the shoes that you were in back in the day, but that doesn't need to be the only option.
Sure. Yeah. And to me, it's been a life. It's not to say life, right? I've been doing this for over 30 years now. For me, I've been in front of two people. I've been in front of hundreds, thousands of people, and to me, I want to make and establish as many emotional ties with people as possible, right? Because I could look at your skin and be like, well, we'll never have the same shade of skin, right? We'll never have the same size, build, etc. However, emotionally, our fibers have a range of emotions, and every one of us can say we felt them at some point.
Yeah.
And so, to me, sharing my story, listening to stories, and learning from stories, I look to align emotionally first, because there's no way I can't, right? And again, my story is different than yours. Your suffering is different than mine, but it's still suffering. To some extent, we align there as well. So that's how I apply my daily my daily walk, man. Period.
Incredible. Around, what do you consider your superpower?
My superpower is now is different because you asked me this 20 years ago. I've been different, right? My superpower today, I feel, is empowering, or not empowering, but motivating, pushing people to break beyond their current particular mindset. I literally, I promise you, I sit here every single week and deal with strangers from everywhere who call me for all kinds of things, unpaid. I just be like, okay, I got 5 minutes, I got 10 minutes, or whatever. And what they're looking for is clarity in in their current trauma, right? Clarity in their current bad situation, a path, a step, a guide, a lesson, a word. So I feel that my superpower right now is changing perspective, changing narrative, and I change narrative and perspective by using the most powerful weapon, which is our ears to listen, right? And our hearts to feel. So when people call me, I don't say, well, I know this experience and this, so let me apply scientific basis, which is all good
Mm,
stuff.
yeah.
What I look to do first, though, is truly listen with the almost open heart that I can, and then use whatever experiences I've had, lessons I've learned, anything I feel to help the person realize another perspective in the situation that they're dealing with. So I think that's my current superpower.
Yeah, it's incredible in that kind of guide role or coaching role or mentor role. Like they all overlap. But
Hmm.
it's incredible how even with the science, like even as a leadership coach, I have instruments, I have assessments, I can do this, I can do that, like
Sure.
all the technical stuff.
Yeah.
But it's incredible how many of the breakthroughs have come from just asking questions
Yeah.
and really seeing somebody,
Yeah.
right? Because if you're with a coach, you feel a little safer. You're not at work, you're not at home. You can kind of, everything's confidential, so you can kind
Yeah.
of open up.
Yeah.
But I've noticed like how much of the breakthroughs, how many of them have come from not an assessment, not a survey, not a questionnaire,
Hmm.
but like talking and listening. And
Yeah.
so many people have said, I've never told anybody that,
Yeah.
or I never consider that, meaning no one's ever asked them, what do you think? Even something as general as that.
Right.
So and I appreciate that you say, there is science, there is data, but
Yeah.
before that, I want to feel what this person is feeling
Right.
and listen to them.
Right. Well,
Cause
in your role, right, which I respect as well, there's a definite need for the scientific thing, the data, and
Mhm.
if you want a basis, right, to open up a particular track or path or lesson, a guide, right, you want someone to, when they're not with you, you don't want the session to stop.
Yeah.
So how critical is it for someone to have something to reflect back on before they see you again or they work with you again? It's literally the practice, right? Like, the practice that practice makes things permanent, right? So
Mm.
for me, it's really like I'm the person you come to for these things as a neutral body to this. Here are some tools that you can use to stabilize, right? To balance and manage. So when you come back to me, you have like once again committed to the practice, and these things become habits, and they become a part of you, and they become things you get better at. So yeah, I combined,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
it's a recipe for someone to truly have an aha, an awakening moment to make better decisions in whatever it is that they need to do, or just have even the hardest conversations. Some people struggle with having conversations. I know because I didn't talk to my mom for years, not because I didn't know how to say hi, mom. I just didn't know how to broach or open up that conversation in a way that wasn't going to end up in some kind of explosive argument, etc. So I think you are a guide, right? You are considered a person that brings balance to a situation, and the tools and the mechanisms and how that happens are going to be different for everyone, but the basis is the same. Listen,
Yeah. Yeah.
understand, feel, and then share.
Yeah. I love that. Around what one last question before we jump into your latest book.
Yep.
What does leadership mean to you?
Leadership to me means being able to, as we just talked about, celebrate lift up, and guide the success of someone else. Y- To me, my team, the people I've worked with, if they're not well, how am I a good leader? So to me, leadership has always been about being able to set people up for success by placing whatever it is that they have as a skill in the right place for them to succeed. So to me, not everybody will fit in every position in the workspace or etc. So you look to maximize whatever skills they have and have folks start to believe in the use of those skills to succeed at something.
And now, Ron, jumping into the book, even before we do that, can you give a little insight into what led you to write your first book? Your
Yeah,
first book and then the collective of poetry that I'd mentioned before.
yeah.
Whatever came out first, if you could just speak about how you came into those projects.
Okay. The Bullets into Bells poetry book was a compilation, a collaborative effort on behalf of numerous folks that had been impacted by gun violence. And I was asked at the time, I was as a peace builder, to play a role in the development of the book and the content in the book. And that, having had my brother murdered, but due to gun violence and witnessing so many murders in my life and in my career and on the streets, I felt that I had been directly traumatized and impacted by gun violence. So I felt that I wanted to support something that would get the message out there about the collective impact of gun violence across the state of Connecticut. So that's what prompted me to write my poem in the book Bullets into Bells. It reflects about the making of a man and how man is broken by lessons that they learn. And that's what the poem is about. Now the book Rage to Peace was something that I felt I wanted to do for three reasons. One, the revisiting and healing that I talked about, the forgiveness, right? The compassion for myself. Two, I bought into the idea, the mentality that my story could help people. So it is good to talk in front of crowds and audiences. However, a book extends that, goes way far further than that. And then third, it was really an opportunity for me to test what I had doubted so many years. I had this really self defeating mentality that I was illiterate, that I wasn't worthy, just based on how my life just moved on throughout life. And I felt that writing a book would allow me to believe more in my ability to stick to something, to have consistency, to do that. So I think that that's what that process was for me. It took me 7 years of hard thinking, hard working, hard reaching out, hard lessons, tears, all the different things that you would go through, revisiting some of the topics I mentioned and wrote about in the book. And that was those two connections. And this latest book, that's a continuation of of Rage to Peace, really is an opportunity for me to share what those particular lived experiences allowed me to do and create, and how it allowed me to be effective, as you mentioned earlier, at the work that I do. I wanted to make sure that individuals realize that going through those things, it's like going through school. It's a different kind of school. You still are very skilled. You just happen to be skilled at things that trauma informed. And
Yeah.
now you can take those things, if turn them around, the right leadership and the right coaching and the right guidance, and you literally can have a master's degree in helping people because you know what it feels like to need help and when someone helps you. So I think the book is a collective walkthrough all of the different opportunities that I was able to take advantage of and work through to build and create in my career.
That's awesome the way that you talk about how you may look at it as an adolescence of violence, of trauma, of neglect, but just the way you spoke about, but if you learn to look back and craft it in such a way and understand yourself and move forward with it, utilizing what you learned, that it is like a graduate degree in life. So
Yeah.
I appreciate that you can take all those different things that happened and
Right.
really inform somebody and tell them, listen, there's a lot of information there. They may not see it. We never see it as we're going through it,
Yeah.
but it's great that they have a guide like you to kind of say, okay, turn around, look what you've been through.
Sure.
And then we can break it down to what each of those things you can use to bring to the table of value.
Well, if following that, perhaps you may agree on this one. I I've worked in detention centers. I've worked on the streets in the community. I've worked in schools, right? And one of the things that life taught me from being unhoused and being on the streets and having to care for myself at such an early age, 13, 14, 15 years old, out on the streets, was to be aware, right? And awareness in human services and social services is key to you being able to really see what someone might be experiencing, whether it's fidgeting, whether it's anxiety, whether it's a behavioral issue, whether it's self-defeating talk, language, even movement. The way people move is very different. It's a very different lesson when you're out there doing and experiencing what I did. You see people move in a way where you can almost see and feel that a person is struggling with something, right? And for me, again, as you mentioned, I use all of that. I literally have walked in many spaces where literally I would stop and look at something or someone and say something that my heart felt like it wanted to say, and it changes the energy, changes a person's direction. I have had individuals that were on their way to do something revengeful, for revenge, and I'll see them as, my fam, how you holding up? How's it going, man? Or I'll say something different. It taught me to change people's immediate energy so I can get them to think about something else. So I think part of being out there taught me some of those kind of instinctual things that your gut feels based on what you experience.
Yeah. And in those conversations I mentioned before, where people took, in most cases, trauma and utilized it in their work to inform their work, to open them up to what other people needed, the word that always came up was sensitivity.
Yeah.
Like it builds
Yes.
up a sensitivity in you that you can just, from all the exposure that you had when you were younger,
Yeah.
you're just able to pick up these little cues that the rest of us may kind of just gloss over.
Yeah. Because I feel that someone is always has something going on. Um, I know people that have read my first book. And they said, "Wow, I didn't know you had all that going on, bro. And you were literally on my street every day, but I didn't know you were going through all that." And that's the issue that may cause many individuals to slip through certain cracks. Right? We're busy people. We're a busy body. We have an influx of dominant information
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
So you have to be sensitive. Beautiful word, and aware, right, and present, and that takes effort and wanting, right. It takes experience to be present enough to feel in a crowded room that somebody needs attention, or that somebody needs, some type of assistance, or that somebody just wants you to look at them or hug them.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
and that's it's a need that's growing even more just because of how distracted we are with social media and
right.
life coming at us in different directions and everybody on their phone or their tablet or this or that.
Yeah,
We're kind of stepping away from that human connection until there's a boiling point. Then
right.
we shut everything off and try to fix it. Yeah.
Yeah, the great point is the boiling point. If you don't mind me, just to share one
No,
thing.
please,
So
please.
I had a group of folks that I was speaking to, and I asked them, I said, "How many of you stop during the day and take a deep breath, close your eyes, and feel and reflect on the emotions you felt throughout the day?" Not a single person raised their hand. Generally, what they would say is, "Well, after work, I go to the gym and I'll burn it out, or I go to yoga class, or I drink
Yeah,
coffee, or I go
yeah,
out with my friends." Right? So I
yeah,
said, let's do something that may not seem physically, you're not physically able to do. I need you to, every 3 hours, just stop for a moment, take the deepest breath that you can, and for 5 seconds, blow out the air, blow out your breath, and think about every emotion you felt in those last 3 hours. and then determine whether or not those emotions that you felt in those 3 hours were that you actually focused on it, that you addressed them, and that you gave them space for them to dissolve, to dissipate, or to address whatever it is that happened. Not a single person did it, and by the time I was done with these folks, they had talked about anxiety, they had talked about uncertainty, they had talked about hate, they had talked about anger, they had talked about happiness, joy, all these things. And
Yeah.
the lesson in that is this: when we allow any emotion to stretch out throughout our day, by the time that we get to someone that says something, or by the time we go to sleep, right? If you have unmet needs, unmet focus on something that is like that, and you go to sleep and you wake up the next day, you have a buildup, right? A buildup of this emotion. So it makes it, like you said, a lot easier for me to turn to explosive behavior, angry behavior, self-destructive behavior, because we never addressed the emotion. We allowed it to build up, and I talked about mold. I used I equated it to mold, right? If I see mold in my shower on the ceiling, no, it's just a little black dot. Just let it ride, let it do its thing. And then here months later, it's a big black dot. And I'm like, well, that seems a little bit overwhelming, right? And then you start reading all the different ways to get rid of it. Oh, watch yourself, put on a mask, do this, but watch your eyes, don't do this, don't do that, right? What ends
Yeah.
up happening is that now it costs you more to get rid of that mold because you didn't address it immediately. And folks got that. They were like, we need to address the emotional things we go through, whether it's joy or anger, it doesn't matter. Sit with it for a second, 5 seconds of your day, to sit with it and know that you felt that and you have to address it. It'll do a lot to lighten your load and not allow you to be so reactive to triggers.
Yeah. That's an amazing point though. Instead of everybody can always say, I've done it. Yeah, after work I'll go for a drink. Yeah, after work I'll go for a walk. Yeah, after work I'll go work out. But that's just fixing the symptom,
Yeah,
like how your body feels. You're not tracing that cord back to the wall to see what the source is and really processing. And it's good to do it throughout the day, every few hours,
yeah,
instead of letting it all build up. We've all been there
yeah,
for the boiling points,
yeah.
the overboiling points. We've
Oh
all
yeah,
been there, whether it was friends, family, whoever it may be. So
yeah,
that's a great reminder.
yeah, for sure, brother.
Aran, when did you start planning this second book? Did
I
you always know that that the first book was gonna take you only so far and that you wanted to expand beyond that? Like where in your process of writing the first book maybe did you think, okay, the second book should be about
Yeah, it was after the first book was out. I had a book talk scheduled, and people were really, really curious about what did I do with all this lived experience. Like, people especially wanted to know, how'd you get out of the gang and found a peace center? Like, 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 talk to me about that. That's just like, they're like, wow, you were, and how are you a felon, and you're a director, or what? How you have, like, literally people were struggling with the connection to the book and me now. Like, they were like, based on everything, you go, how the heck are you here, bro? Like,
yeah.
so I felt like, you know what? Let me explain in greater detail how my path led to here, like where I was and what I was doing in between all of that. How I was evolving, because I think that's what was missing with the book. It did talk about hard decisions. It did talk about me experiencing what I did, but folks wanted to know, but how? Like, how did you manifest and develop into who you are right now? And that's what prompted me to write the second book.
So what did the first book cover? Just to clarify, what was it that the first book covered?
It covered my lived experiences from my trauma, my homelessness, my abuse, my prison, my gang involvement, and all the different lessons that the streets and all of that taught me. And it concludes literally with a realization that responding with how I knew and grew up in the lessons I learned was no longer the right path for me to
That's
take.
why.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's why. Your readers were like, yeah, well, come on, man.
Yeah,
Give
yeah, they
give
were.
us more. Like what else
Yeah,
was there?
yeah.
Um, so how did you, without giving away too much, but just what's the path you take the reader on with the new book?
So I take them on the path of lessons learned during this process, right? So in the first book, I talked about what happened to me, right? In this book, I talked about how what was happening to me was literally building who I am. And I talked, and what I did, the book takes people through the realization that I wasn't just going through things, that I was a preventer of suffering while I was going through it. And I think that that's what the book does. It takes them through not only those stages of becoming a peace builder, becoming an advocate for peace, becoming an intervener, an interrupter, but it takes them through how I did it, how I applied it. And I think that's what the book does. Because again, I didn't realize until I started writing the first one and reaching out to people for content that people were giving me more than I was asking them for. So an example, I would say, "Hey John, you and I were in a car. I can't remember this detail. Did it happen like this?" And John would say, "Yep, it happened like that." But and then they would go on to talk to me and say, "Yeah, but you know, while we were in the car, man, you gave me advice about this, or you told me about that. I remember when you helped me here." And because you're doing it, so you're just doing it. You're not writing it down. And I was like, "Wow, I
Yeah.
did that? Yeah, yeah. One time you helped me do this." And I was like, "Wow!" Like, and so that started to inform what this book is about, which is despite that, despite the challenges, I found ways to insert help and compassion and support and to create in my brain ways to stop suffering that I wasn't necessarily aware of at the time.
And I'm curious, I always ask these questions of the authors that I have on. I asked you last time, what lessons have you taken away from writing this book? Because obviously, it's your life. When you
Yeah.
wrote the first book, even when you wrote this, just based on what you said, you asked people certain things and you can learn a little more history about yourself. What is it that stood out? What changed the most in you because of this book being out?
So this book allowed me to realize what I had been able to create, what I had been able to build, what I've been able to impact. Because again, I don't think as a person who's helping people, we just sit there and say, "Well, I've helped 1,000 people." You know, it's just this is what we do. I think the book gave me this ability, this opportunity to reflect on the fact that I was determined to help build up as many people as I could, to create as many systems of support as I could for the suffering that I was seeing. I wasn't thinking about that. You're just doing, you do this. We're just doing the book, writing the book and saying, "Wow, like I didn't realize I started that program. I didn't realize I started that initiative. I didn't realize that I've hired over 300 people in my career for work. I didn't realize that that I revisited every place where I suffered. I revisited it in a positive way. That's insane to me. It's insane for me to think about. I got bullied here, or I got denied here, and now as I'm walking through this book, I'm realizing that every single one of those spaces I return to in a leadership capacity, in a creative capacity, in a founding capacity, I don't know if many people get that opportunity to revisit their entire walk in life and be able to contribute in a different way to change the story of that place, right? Like I'm changing the story of the city, changing the story of that building, changing my relationship with the people. Because I was this kid just causing all kinds of chaos, and all of a sudden we're sitting face to face, and we're able to now work together, and I'm able to mend relationships based on the change. And that's what I got from the book.
Yeah, I think so many people forget. They don't even go back and look at their life, the
Yeah,
various stages. I think so many of us complain about where we are, that we're not quite where we want to be, and we don't revisit our lives. You don't take stock of the good things, the bad things. We don't even look at it like that.
yeah,
And then because we don't look at it like that, I don't think many people have that opportunity you did to like open it up and go back. And
yeah.
it's incredible that you had these negative experiences in these places and then went back and built something positive in each of them. Yeah, that's incredible that you were able to have that opportunity to do that.
Yeah, it's been a gift, man. I sit with as I write more, I sit with the understanding that my map or my puzzle really had so many aspects, so many factors, so many things. And I've lived an exceptional life despite all of that. I've lived incredible experiences, and I have to honor that. And it doesn't necessarily mean that I'll be on a yacht, somewhere with billions of dollars. It just means that I was a gift. Like every place that I landed had its gift and its reason, and I'm understanding that now. Had I not written these books, I don't know if I would have given it the same value.
Did you anticipate finding that much in the second book? Because even with the first book, I remember you went out, you interviewed people. You're like, oh, I discovered stuff about myself. Did you anticipate? You probably anticipated some, but did you anticipate just how much you were going to discover?
I did not. I literally I had a series of files and books, and I realized one thing. I I am I am a hyper like card collector of business cards. I didn't realize that. Going through this book, I did. I have three books, card books, or business card books, full of every person I've ever met in my life that gave me a business card. I still have them all of them.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that that would be a map to where I've been until I went through this process. I said, wait a second, I have my card book. I can tell you that card book is going to help me know in position, place. So I've reached out.
Did you have them in order of, when you got them?
Yeah,
Did you
yeah,
have
because I
them
would
in?
put them in the book. Because to me, it comes from. I tell you, I know what I learned, right? So there's a deficit mindset. You're very familiar with the deficit mindset, right? Deficit mindset is someone that harbors, holds on to things because they feel like they're going to fall again, possibly at some point, and they're not going to have enough, right?
Yeah.
So to me, in my deficit mindset thinking, right, growing up in poverty, growing up without my mom and dad in the picture, growing up on the streets, when I finally got it to the point where someone gave me a business card, I saw them as a potential way out. I
Yeah.
saw them as a potential helper, as a potential resource that could help not only me, but once I became a leader in my own right, I felt that they could help people I wanted to help. It would be a connection, right? It would be that fabric that connected us, right? So I started saving these cards because I felt like I'm always going to know someone I can reach out to. So John says, hey, Nazario, I need to do something around federal tax, whatever. You know what? I got a business card. Here you
Yeah,
go.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So I think for me, I saved them that way. I stored them that way. So I learned things about just my path that I literally could not have anticipated learning through writing the
Uh,
book.
that's incredible.
Mm.
What do you think? I know this one just came out.
Yeah.
I know it just came out, but do you have like a general direction you would want to go to for a next book or next writings?
Yeah. Thank you for the question. Yeah. And I was thinking about while I was writing this one, similar to you and I talking. I am going to publish my next one. Is it's a, it's really a guide book. Move Different is the title. The title is really about subtle changes that we can make in our lives to literally readjust what you're going through, reestablish a different path for yourself. So I've got the 19 chapters headlined and outlined, and it's really going to give basic instruction, guide, steps, thoughts, things that folks can utilize in order to prevent unnecessary challenges, right? Or to surround yourself with the right space, climate, culture, people to help you remain strong in times of weakness. Because sometimes we may give time to a space that's not in our favor. We may feel pressure to be there. We may feel like everyone is there. We may feel lonely. We may feel like we want to belong. And
Yeah.
literally, it's a setback for you. No one else may know it's setting you back, but it's literally can be a setback for you physically, emotionally, right? And I want to be able to help people perhaps think of those things as they evolve into whatever safety place they need, whatever place of thriving they need. So that's what the next book will be.
Around for this book, for the current book,
Yeah.
you've given a lot of great lessons. You've given a lot of insights into what you want to show people.
Right.
But anybody that might be listening to this where they may think the book's not for them or it doesn't apply to their life in some way, because I think all of these books, every book that I've spoken about on here that authors have shared or guests have shared, whether it doesn't look like it belongs in your forte, if it
Mm,
doesn't relate, even if you think it doesn't relate to you in some way, there's always a way to connect it to someone else's life.
sure.
So for you, what lessons would you hope that people take away from this book?
My lessons is my lesson is I'll talk for one specific lesson.
Sure.
Reflection on your lived experience, your life is critical, right? To inform why you are. It just is, right? So to me in the cover, right, you see the cover is puzzles. And
Yeah.
despite everything that I've been through, I'm still an unfinished product. You know, you see some of the empty spots. And I did that on purpose. So right now, had I not reflected on these particular pieces of me, I wouldn't necessarily know what I want to avoid and what I want to aspire to and what I still have to do, right? So those three areas. So for me, it's really about how can I get individuals to realize that they are comprised of multiple things, right? And that those multiple things have informed and created who you are. However, there's still many pieces of you that have not been discovered. So if you are someone that's reading this book, this this would apply to anyone because we are all being developed as on a daily basis, and we are all building pieces of ourselves. No stage of your life is going to be the same. Your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, it just is not. So as long as you know that you are still a work in progress, which is what this book is
Mm.
really about, then you this can apply to you. Second to that, if you have built anything, if you have aspired to do something, if you have impacted someone or someone has impacted you, this applies to you because this story is about those things as well, like honoring and celebrating the people that have impacted you, and honoring and also celebrating the impact that you've had simultaneously at the same time, knowing that you still have more to feel and more to do.
Around what book would you recommend that's inspired you? Is there a particular book that stands out for you?
So right now, I think I said this before. I'm drawing a blank on the name, but it's the old man in the
The
fish
Sea.
and the old man in the sea. Um, I, I've thought I hung on to that. I hung on to that book. I've read a few others, but for some reason I keep going back to that book, and it's because the lesson in there from was look at the perspective of everyone. Right? You look at the fish, you look at the fisherman, and you look at the people wondering about the story, right? About why he fought so long for the fish. Why didn't he just cut the line? Why was he out there? Why did he sacrifice? Like all these different things allow me to always know that there's a different perspective. There's a different way to see what's happening. And to me, it's impacted all my life since I read it. It was a friend of mine that said, "Have you ever read this book?" And I said, "No." So really, everybody has. I said, "No." Well, obviously I haven't. So I read it, and now it really does um, it really does shape me when I'm looking from the outside to be more aware of the perspective of the fisherman or the perspective of the fish or etc. And then I went to a storytelling retreat to learn more about how stories impact you. And what I learned there is there are even 20 more stories that could come from one perspective. So I think that's the one book that I would say has helped me a lot. I have a few others that I'm currently into right now, but yeah, that's the one. That's definitely the one.
Yeah, it's crazy because now that you mention it, I remember you talking about it the first time for the same reasons.
Yeah,
And it's incredible that even though you're reading these other books, that
yeah,
one just still stands out.
yeah.
I remember having to read that in school, when you're that young. I mean, was it high school maybe? Like to us, it just didn't make sense.
Hmm.
The teacher's like, oh, these are the lessons to take away, but you're a kid. It doesn't really stand out. But I have to just, based on your perspective about it
Hmm.
and perspectives in it, I need to
Yeah.
go back and check it out because you know how it is when you read certain things, the same way your life is not the same in your 10, 20s, 30s, whatever
Yeah.
age, decade you're in. When you read something because of your experience in whatever decade you're in, there are different things that you take away from
Yeah.
something you may have read 10, 20 years ago.
Yeah. What I want to do is, and you will understand this as a life coach and someone, you want to have an open mind, right, to what you're witnessing. Right. If you see something and your immediate response or reaction is to lock it in to only one mindset, one perspective, you lose so much opportunity to see the full picture, right? To see and to me, that's what that book has done. And again, there's another book, Code of Blue or Code Blue, and it's an officer who was an officer for years and years. He talks about his perspective. Even that book, when I read it, I used the fisherman's book, right, The Man in the Sea, to
Yeah.
allow me to see that perspective. So I think it's just impacted my ability to think about how everything fits in what I'm seeing. Like, am I really looking at this? Am I being objective? Am I stepping out? And it's a valuable tool to have in my line of work when I'm going in to help people. If I'm going in, well, I know the solution already. Yeah, I'm going to
Yeah.
fail. I'm going to fail.
Yeah. Around very quickly before we wrap up, can you speak to fear? Can you
Yeah.
speak to fear and how it may keep you? I mean, in light of everything going on in the world today, especially in the US, but without diving into the specifics of the politics, can you speak to fear and how it keeps you closed minded, how it
Yeah.
keeps you away from the world because maybe you do have that scarcity mindset where there's nothing left for you if you don't kind of keep it to yourself. But how do you speak to fear? Especially, you don't have to address anything that's going on today, but
Right.
it, for me, fear has just come up because of everything we see. But how does that play into what words do you put to the idea of fear and what it costs us?
Oh, thank you. I facilitated a training on fear. And the four responses now, it's like fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And
Hmm.
under fight, you know what it is. You want to fight it, and in the flee, you flee. On the freeze, you freeze. But fawn is where you align with your your punisher or those causing you fear because you feel like you have to. So you align with them. And you're like, yeah, because as long as they don't point me out, I'm good, as long and that'll keep me safe. So to me, having facilitated a training on that and having studied it, I know that it was an integral part of me, right? So fear caused me not to talk to my dad about what happened to me. Fear caused me not to face my literacy issue or be embarrassed and have shame. Fear caused me not to talk to my mom and forgive her because I was like, this is going to happen. Fear caused me to maybe not um, intervene in certain situations. Fear caused me not to listen. So I feel that during this time, this place that we're living in, fear has fear has a way of making individuals remain in a space that is safe for them, but not necessarily good for them. And I think that that's where I see fear. Fear will cripple you from really seeing outside of your own bubble, right? So to me, it's a paralyzing emotion that nowadays is leading to anger and disconnection and isolation, where people are like, "Well, I'm just stay in this box and do internet stuff," because I would be too fearful to open my eyes to something that's different, something I don't understand, something that I didn't grow up with, something nobody educated me on, because I feel safe here.
Yeah.
I think, my opinion, it leads to a a feeling of safety and a safety feeling of protection and a feeling of isolation that isn't necessarily all being done or being led by truth or facts.
Yeah.
You don't go beyond that. So I think that on fear, that's how I feel about that particular emotion.
Thank you so much, man.
Of
And
course.
now in wrapping up, is there anything that you're up to these days? Anything you want to share? Anything that I didn't ask or that you want to put out there? The floor is yours, man.
Yeah. So first, thank you again for the opportunity. So Nazario Motivation continues again to serve as a consultant. I'll be speaking and training on gang prevention, on anger, on a number of other things moving forward. Right now, I chose to start a project on TikTok that speaks. It's called the Power Hour with Nazario Motivation, and I host it Tuesday and Thursdays, 8 to 10, and we dive into topics like these all over the country. I have individuals from all over the world who chime in on all kinds of different developmental things and social emotional things, etc. And I'm really honored to have met incredible people. Second to that, I am going to be recording music. I talked with you about that earlier, and it's going to be using peace as the guide for the music. I'm working on one particular song called Purpose, and it will be kind of like a pop R&B slash kind of thing where I talk about a person's purpose. Because again, this is just another way of getting the message out there that I'm hoping to get. And lastly, my Spanish copy of this book will be released in about a week. So I wrote it in Spanish,
Nice.
and I'm
Nice.
and I'm recording the Audible next month, so it'll be available in Audible as well. So those some other small projects that I'm embarking on right now.
Small
Oh
projects.
yeah,
That's
yeah. I mean,
amazing, man.
yeah,
Hey, and you never, yeah, today you brought it up before we hit record about your singing.
yeah,
You say you mentioned today, like in passing, you're like, yeah, I'm going back to my singing. I'm
yeah,
like, what the hell are you talking about? What's singing? So when did you try to, what was your singing
yeah.
exposure? Or what?
Right. So, um, I I heard the genre of Latin freestyle. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Latin freestyle, but Latin freestyle was created in the Bronx. I know that now, and it was this combination of hip hop and pop. Right? It was called Latin house, Latin pop. And growing up, I heard a few songs and I got very interested in it. It was very emotional, very tied to emotional breakups and that kind of thing. So I started singing it. And one day I was singing for a friend of mine. His name is Victor, and he was a producer of music. And he was like, "Hey, you ever thought about singing, man? You actually sing, man. Like you got some stuff going on with you." And I was like, "No, I wasn't ready at the time. I wasn't ready." So then I met a
Yeah.
producer, a promoter from Waterbury, Connecticut, who had just launched a group of R&B singers, and he had two brothers and myself, and he said, "Hey, you guys can sing this song," and I said, "Cool." So we got together. We opened up for Shy, the performer, the singer Shy in Hartford, in the north end of Hartford, and that kind of propelled me into wanting to sing. So my partner Carlos and I, who I met later on, formed a group called SJV, which was my nickname Smurf and his Javier, so SJV. And then we switched it to Seriously Jamming Vocals, and we started just singing pop, R&B, freestyle music at different venues across the East Coast in Florida. And then that kind of went away. I focused on youth work, but it was another piece of my life that I enjoyed. I am a earth sign, and I'm a creative. I like to create. So music and writing is something
Just go hand in
it
hand.
goes hand in hand. Now it doesn't mean that when I belt out a note, everybody's gonna like it. It just means that it just means
Just
that I
means we
like
turn
doing
up
it.
the music.
Yeah, it just means that I like it. That's all.
Iran's newest book is The Original Peacebuilder, From a Life of Violence to a Heart-Led Purpose. Iran, thank you so much for sharing about your life again. Even though we had this conversation last summer, we went through it all. I asked you all the questions. There were still things that I learned about you today, even your singing, which I appreciate, my friend. I love the work you're doing. Obviously, it's incredible how just in, I don't know what, 6 months since we spoke,
Yeah,
um, how important your work is.
yeah,
um, your experience in the streets when you were younger is different than what's going on in the world today, but it's centered on, you've said it countless
mhm,
times, compassion,
yeah.
compassion, and then offsetting that fear. So I think your work is more relevant now than ever. And I appreciate your time and thank you for being here again.
My friend. No, the honor is mine. The pleasure is mine. Continue doing your work and serving that purpose, man. And thank you for supporting authors too, man. That's really awesome.
Absolutely. I love the work all you guys are doing. And if there's anything that I might have missed, let me know. We're limited on time. I have so much to ask. I can drag around down a rabbit hole of so many different variations. But in the meantime, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing. And I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye.